Hey everybody, I'm Jason Mefford and I'm back with Brad Miller. And we're walking a spiritual path with you today. Um, we usually record these several weeks in advance, but one thing that we had talked about that we would share more about was your higher self. And so we thought it would be a good opportunity to talk a little bit about that. This is one of those topics that it takes one pretty much their whole life to truly understand it, and it's a huge abyss. But let's just maybe talk about some of the basics of how you can start to uh, get in touch more with your higher self. So, Brad, I know you brought this up and you're holding me accountable to talk more
hmm
about it. So I don't know if this is one of those where, kind of a Q&A thing or what sort of format we should do. But, as you were listening and kind of brought this up again, I mean, do you have questions about it? How should we take today's discussion?
Yeah, so, I know a lot of times in our episodes we kind of mention something or we kind of start down a little path and we're like, all right, this is something that's a little too deep, or, we're already, all the way through the episode, so we're going to have to push this off and talk about another episode. And we rarely do. Um, and so this past week, when I was actually listening to one of the episodes, because every week I listen to the episode that we get put out, because there are things in there that even though I was present obviously for the conversation that we had originally, I still get a lot going back and listening to it again. Some things that I missed, maybe because I was trying to think of a response, or maybe I was taking some notes or something and I missed kind of what was happening, or just the fact that I'm in a different place now. I'm in a different mind space right now. I'm a different person than I was even a month ago. And so things really kind of hit me sometimes a little differently or jump out when I hear it the second time as opposed to the first time. And one of the things that we said in this episode, we talked about your higher self. And so I breached the question of kind of in jest a little bit, because you talked about higher self. And I was like, well, how do we meet our higher self? Is it something that's like an app you like just swipe or something? We're trying to, like
Swipe right or swipe left, whichever
right,
one
to
the
try to
right
find your
way
higher
is.
self. Is that kind of like a dating thing or whatnot? But I think, and so kind of listening back, that jumped out as something that, hey, that's something that I'm interested in learning more about, because I know I don't have a ton of experience in that. And so if I figure if I don't have experience in it, find it beneficial. I know that those other handful of people, or however people are watching this, they will also find value in this as well, because it's something that we maybe talk about in cursory. We mention it, we say that we're higher self, but we necessarily talk about it or kind of explain it a little bit better. So I mean, I guess probably the first thing is kind of the basics of what is the higher self.
Well, and this is one of those where, in a lot of our episodes here, we're just, trying to share our experiences, trying to keep things pretty basic. And I will tell you, the higher self is a very deep, 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 deep place to go.
hmm
It's an abyss. It's darkness of trying to understand this. And like I said, we will spend our whole lives here remembering who we are and connecting with our higher self, because that's part of the spiritual path. We talked about that a lot of spirituality is about connectedness. It's about being connected to the things around us. It's about being connected to Anima Mundi. It's about being connected to the collective consciousness, right, is a term that Jung kind of threw out there. And our higher self is part of that all. And so, this is one of those where, my mentor, my benefactor has told me this many, many times, right? Drop your reason. Don't try to understand this with logic because you're not going to understand it.
hmm
It's the same thing that his benefactor told him. right? Don't try to think your way through this. You're not going to be able to think your way through this based on our 3D linear time paradigm of what we have, right? And so, as you're listening to this, I might say some things that just seem batshit crazy. And in our 3D life, right? If we try to think our way through it, we're going to think it's just craziness, but it's not actually craziness. It's a part of kind of this bigger process of remembering ourself. And so we've made reference before to these things called codes of conduct, which are, basic, somewhat basically the same for most people, but they're a little bit different, as well. And it's, again, that's a very deep subject that we can't get into today. My benefactor says we could spend years talking about this. So it's pretty hard to talk about that in 30 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever we do. But, one of kind of the maxims that's out there that has been put in a lot of ancient wisdom traditions is a code of conduct that pretty much says, remember yourself. Remember yourself. And one of our biggest lessons, one of the biggest things we can learn is to remember ourself. Because as we talked about before, when we land in this body, we forget who we are. We forget past lives, concurrent lives, right? Because time is not linear. And we do that on purpose so we can learn and grow quickly on this particular planet. This planet is unique in the way time was created as an application to allow us to live in a linear fashion, which allows us to learn and grow and evolve quicker. But linear time and the forgetting that happens also makes it a really challenging place to do business, if you will. Okay. But it's done on purpose because when people do the work in this environment, they can evolve much quicker than they can in other planetary systems. It's one of the reasons why this world was created, why this experiment was done here, is exactly for that purpose. Um, like, oh my goodness, where do I go? Yeah, it's and I know we've talked about that before, and so I think that's kind of a premise that everybody, needs to believe, really kind of understand that, we're much greater than what we see in this hologram of a life. And once you can start to see that and start to remember who you are, then you start to learn who your higher self is. Now, when I say remember who you are, there are a lot of people in the spiritual space who say, "Oh, that's past life regression." And so they'll go do hypnosis sessions, they'll hire a hypnotist, they will, do maybe self-hypnosis to try to see, "Oh, who was I? Who am I?" based on other roles that we have played in the past, in the present, in the future, because again, time is all concurrent. And so a lot of times, when we have these episodes where we remember certain things, we think it might be in the past. And so that's why people say, oh, past life regression, right? Because when I remember myself in ancient Rome, well, my goodness, based on linear time, that was 1,000 years ago, right? Or whatever. No,
2000,
2,000 years,
2000.
2,000 years ago, right? And so people say, oh, well, that's a past life. But there is no past life. There's all concurrent things, everything all at once, all at the same time, sort of thing going on. Or it could appear to be maybe a primitive society to us that actually is happening in the future in our linear time, but we don't recognize it. Okay. And so that's not what we're talking about here. Because while those roles that we've had or that we will have are important to our development spiritually, that's not who we are. Those are roles that we've played, right? So again, if you think about, famous actors, we'll say, Daniel Day-Lewis is one of the most talented actors of all time. When the guy does his role, he goes all in, right? That's why he's won so many awards for his acting. And so, Daniel Day-Lewis is a person, right? He's a man who think he's still alive, pretty sure he's still alive, at least in this timeline. But he chooses to play a role. And when he goes into that role, he goes all into that role. And so, if I remember right, one of the roles that he played was Abraham Lincoln in one of the movies. And so, Daniel Day-Lewis is not Abraham Lincoln, but he played Abraham Lincoln, right? I can't remember what his character was called in There Must Be Blood or something like that. I mean, amazing movie. But he was not that person, right? He was playing a role. And so, when we look at ourselves and try to say, well, who am I? Well, I've been given a name in this life by my parents, Jason Mefford. I'm playing a role of Jason Mefford in this timeline, but that's not who I am. That's a role I'm playing. Is it making sense so far? I'm trying to figure out how to make this
Yeah, no,
make
we've
sense.
talked something about a little bit about this in the previous episodes, talking about the idea of we're all part of a big play, like life is kind of a play, and that you're here playing a role. And I think we talked about it maybe in the context of your path is kind of like the script, but you can choose how you want to act out that script. If you want to ad lib some lines, you can do that. If you want to just skip over something, you can do that. If you want to go off script completely, you can do that. There's this script that we're given, but it's your free choice of how you want to play it. And everyone has their own script, and everyone's script is a little different, telling them just what they know. So I don't know what you know, and you don't know what somebody else knows. All of our scripts have our own parts and not the other parts with them. And so part of life is playing the roles as is on our sheet or on our script and seeing how we interact with others and their script and their
Mhm.
roles. And so I
It,
think that, yeah, goes a lot to kind of what we're talking about here.
well, and we don't have access to the rest of the script,
Right.
right? And so
Mhm.
this is where again the forgetting is on purpose. Because when another actor in this play says or does something, and we're like, oh, holy shit, right? I'm triggered. I'm angry now, or I'm feeling gratitude for this person, or whatever it is, right? we don't know what to expect. And that's on purpose, right? And so it's like we're given just our script sheet, but we don't know what the other actors are going to do.
Mm,
And we play all different kinds of roles, right? Because we pick roles that are important for our development. And so again, you can look at actors this way too, right? Where
mhm,
there's certain actors like, Liam Neeson. Love Liam Neeson. But if you look, at the roles that he plays, they're all kind of the same. He plays the same kind of character in most of the movies that he's in. There's nothing wrong with that. He's very good at it, right? He makes a lot of money doing it, where there are other actors who like to take different roles, right? They don't want to be pegged into a particular genre, let's say. And I'm thinking about, oh gosh, what's his name? We can see his face. He played in like Dallas Buyers Club and um, Matthew McConaughey. Matthew
mm,
McConaughey. So I read his autobiography a little while ago, and what's interesting is he was being pegged as being a rom-com actor.
mm,
And so if you look at a lot of the early roles that he played, he was always kind of cast in these romantic comedies. And he was paid very well for it, but he decided, you know what, it's not for me. I don't want to be that my whole career.
mhm.
And so he actually turned down certain roles. And I think they wanted to pay him like 15 or $20 million for this one role. And he's like, nope, I'm not going to do another rom-com. And he really kind of got blacklisted for a while in the industry because he wouldn't do what they wanted him to do. Why? Because that's not who he was. And there were different roles that he wanted to play, right? And I think Dallas Buyers Club, I think is what it was, the name of the movie. He won an Academy Award for it. Amazing, 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 right? In what he did, the body transformations that he had to go through. But that was him choosing to take on a different role to learn and grow the way he needed to. And so we all do that, right? And we all like to think, oh, we're love and light, we're love and light, we're always this, we're always that. No, sometimes we play the bad guys, as well, if that's something that we need to learn. Now, remembering yourself is also kind of like Matthew McConaughey, right? Where we sit there and say, hey, you know what? This world wants to put me in a box. This world wants me to give away my personal power. It wants me to agree with the belief in the indoctrination systems in this world. But deep down inside, we know that's not who we are. And so at that point, we have the choice. We can say, okay, I'm going to give in to fit in.
Mhm.
I'm going to play the rom-com roles. I'm going to do, whatever, people tell me I should do, but we're not going to really grow very much. Why? Because we're not remembering who we are. We're just being who someone else expects us to be.
Mm.
And so part of remembering yourself and getting in touch with your higher self, right, is to understand who you really are and being authentic and true to who you really are.
So how do we figure out who we really are? I think is the next question. I mean, that sounds.
Well,
I mean, I think everything the actor analogy I think works great with explaining exactly kind of how we are not the roles we play. We are not the person that everyone expects. And again, that's how a lot of us are. Is we're based on we act based on how others expect us to act, how we were taught by our parents, how society believes us to be. I mean, this is a battle that I fight all the time with lawyers. If there's a set lawyer, what does a lawyer look like? And
Yep.
all, there's pressure for us lawyers to kind of fit in that mold, that we should all be wearing shirts and suits and ties, and sit at an office with wood paneling, and slicked back hair and all these other things, like that a lawyer should do. But that's not, that's what society, that's what others have put upon us, and a lot of us who don't fit with that.
Mhm.
We're wearing we're wearing t-shirts. I know there's lawyers who are covered in tattoos and have long hair, or wear ball caps all the time. Like, those people are not fitting in with that role. And so the question then is, how do we know who we are, that we're the person with the long hair, that we're not the person in the suit, that we're the person, with the full sleeve of tats, versus the clean cut, um,
Mhm. Well, and I think part of it is we have to experience life, right? And one thing I've gotten taught is, hey, Brad, I've got this wonderful hamburger right here, and it's so good. I love it. It's great. It's a, whatever fancy gourmet burger. And I can tell you that all day. And I can tell you, Brad, you have to have this hamburger. You're not cool unless you eat the hamburger like me. Okay. I mean, it goes back to like stupid teenage peer pressure, but when you think about it, a lot of the things that from an indoctrination and belief standpoint, it's just peer pressure, right? And as teenagers, we want to fit in. So if I tell you, Brad, this is the best hamburger ever, you have to have it or you're not cool, right? At that point, you have a choice to make. You can say, "Well, Jason, I think you're full of shit. I don't think I have to eat that hamburger to be cool. Or maybe I don't even like hamburgers." Now, how do you know that you don't like this hamburger that I'm showing you? Well, the only way to know is to actually try it and see if you like it, right? So we have to experience things and then sit with it and see how we actually feel, right? And I think this is where psychologists call this cognitive dissonance, right? Where you're acting in a way that does not seem true to yourself, and so it causes kind of a splitting, of your
Mhm.
psyche versus your actions, and that can lead to, what they call psychological issues, right? And so, you gotta kind of try it. And so you say, okay, well, you know what? I don't know if I'm gonna like it or not. Let me take a bite. And you take a bite and you're like, yeah, not that great, right? How do you feel? If you don't really like it, well, be true to yourself, right? Don't try to um, make me happy by telling me, oh, it's the greatest burger I've ever had, Jason. At the meantime, you're like, "Bah!" you know? Or on the flip side, you may eat it and you're like, wow, I really like that. That's a new combination, something that I never would have thought about. And I remember, here's a silly example, but a long, long time ago, Ruffles potato chips came out with a new flavor, and it was called sour cream and cheddar. And when I first saw that, I thought, how disgusting is that? How disgusting. That's, And then I had one and I went, huh, this is actually pretty good. I actually like it. Right. And so I think, we just have to be true to what feels right for us, what resonates for us, what feels in alignment with us. And so, with that lawyer example, hey, if you like long hair, great. Grow your hair long. See how you feel, right? Be authentic to who you feel like you are. If you want to wear t-shirts as a lawyer, wear t-shirts, right? Now, some people are going to judge you, right? But then again, you have the choice. And these choices are the things that are developing us spiritually. They're allowing us to take back our personal power that we've lost. And you say, you know what? I like wearing t-shirts. I don't care if you don't think I am professional because I'm not wearing a suit and tie. I like t-shirts. I'm good enough. I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. You know, our Saturday Night Live.
Mhm.
Uh, Deep Thought. No, it wasn't Deep Thought anyway.
Mhm.
The Al Franken character.
Mhm.
But really believe it and mean it and say, you know what? If I have a sleeve of tattoos, if I have long hair, if I'm wearing a t-shirt, if I've got some crazy long ass beard, just starting to be true to and do what feels comfortable to you instead of what other people expect you to do.
Mhm.
And, when we're quiet with ourselves, we start to realize, we start to notice when we feel uncomfortable in certain situations and where we feel more comfortable. And I think that's a very simple way to kind of start, is am I doing this because everybody else wants me to do it? Or am I
Mhm.
doing it because it's really what I want to do? Do I believe this because it's what everybody else tells me I'm supposed to believe? Or do I believe this because it's what I really believe? That's a big step,
Mhm.
and one of the first steps probably in remembering, who you are,
Mhm.
right? And so again, if we go back to the lawyer or the actor example, right?
Mhm.
Well, let's say, and again, this I'm I'm using this as an example to make a point, right? I'm not using it to disparage anybody or anything like that. But let's just say that, an actor is given an opportunity to play a role, and this role is maybe asking them to play, a homosexual man. And this person has a problem with homosexuality. Are they going to accept the role? Are they not going to accept the role? Right? Based on who they actually are. Now, if I paid you $20 million to play it, right, would people give up their convictions or who they are? Would they prostitute themselves for the money? That's not being true to who you are. And again, it's not about that. You could take anything else, right? Like, I want you to play a dictator, a nasty, ruthless dictator who is beating and killing people and using power, right? And if you fundamentally say, hey, I don't like that person. I don't like what they did. I don't want to play that person because that's not who I feel like I am. And the same thing, are you going to stand true to your convictions of who you believe you are? Or are you going to take the money and give in, give away your personal power, pretend to be somebody that you're not? And that's why authenticity is really so important, but it's also scary at the same time
Mhm.
because when we show up that way, I know for me, probably personally, I've missed out on making some money or having certain clients because of the way I talk, the way I look, the way I dress. Um, but that's okay. I have to be okay with that and be true and authentic to who I actually am.
Mhm.
So that's probably, one kind of baby step that we can all
Mhm.
take. And then the more we do that, and the more we're true to who we feel like we are, we're going to start remembering more. And the more we experience and the more we sit with it and say, do I like that? Do I not like that? Am I giving in, or is this who I really am? And it's okay, right, to admit uh when we are something that other people may not like, because even for me, I don't just play this role, but I'm a very kind and loving person. I'm a very patient person, but I also have another side that can do what needs to be done and can be ruthless. And some people may consider dark some of the things that I may do or could do or have done. But that's okay because it's a part of who I am, right? I can throw thunderbolts and lightning. I can cut off people's heads, at the same time that I am loving and kind. They're all a part of me, and that's okay, right? It's things for me to learn. There's certain times when I need to show up with the sword in certain situations. There's other times that I don't need to do that. But we also shouldn't, because I think this is one of those things from a personal development, and even it carries over into spirituality. I think sometimes people think, oh, well, my goodness, that's so dark, or that's evil. I can't think that way. I can't admit that about myself because that's not all love and light. Well, none of us are all love and light all the time. And part of it is accepting maybe the parts of us that we don't want to accept because it's who we really are, and it's okay. So there's maybe kind of one place to start.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I mean, it brings to mind thoughts of my daughter, preteen daughter who has very strong opinions on things, but doesn't have the experience to back it. So you talked about the potato, the chips. So, a lot of times she'll see something and she'll just say, oh, maybe something I fix for dinner or, something we've had food wise. And she's like, I don't like that. Well, how do you know? You've never tried it before, and she just has in her head that, well, I don't like that because something similar I've had before I didn't like, or I don't think I like that flavor, or, whatever it might be. And so she doesn't actually know because she's not experienced, she's not tried it.
mhm.
And one of the things that we really push her to do is that you can't say you don't like something unless you've actually tried it. The trick, though, is that a lot of times she has in her head, I do not like this. So even though she tries it because we're kind of forcing her to do it, her head's already telling her, I don't like this. So even if she may actually kind of like it, she's going to be like, I don't like this because that's what she's kind of told herself. That's what she's told us. That cognitive dissonance there a little bit where she doesn't want to say one thing and then all of a sudden, like, oh, well, actually, I do like it. Um, and so that's something I think we got to be careful about is kind of these preconceived notions going into these experiences, um, because they can cloud how our these feelings that when we're getting in this, we're having these experiences, we're having the sensations, the feelings, and we're sitting there with them and trying to decide, do I like this? Is it me? Whatever. If we have in our head already going in like, yes, this is me, or no, this is not me, that can actually give us a false reading of whether or not that is actually truly us. And so
Yeah.
that's something I think, kind of be aware of, that's whether it's with food, potato chips, or, whatever. That's kind of just a human tendency to do that when we get that thought in our head of whether we like it or not.
Well, that's one of the little nuances, as you start doing this, to be thinking about, well, is this a thinking or feeling thing? Is it thinking or feeling? And sometimes we think it's feeling, but it's actually thinking, right? And so in that example, right, if your daughter is saying, "Oh no, I don't like that." Well, why? Is it because one of the kids at school told her, "Oh, Brussels sprouts are disgusting"? And
Mhm,
so I don't like Brussels sprouts because Jimmy or Janie told me that Brussels sprouts are disgusting, right? Is it thinking? Are we trying to logically, look at it that way? Are we relying back on the beliefs or indoctrinations that we've been taught to say,
mhm,
what we like or don't like? But we're tricking ourselves thinking, well, it's my feeling. I feel like I don't like Brussels
mhm,
sprouts when it's really a thought. And yet, on the flip side, sometimes too, it's like, I could come to you with that hamburger and you're like, I don't think that hamburger's for me. But it's not coming from a place of thinking, it's coming from a place of connection to the universe or to feeling. And it's
mhm,
like, no, for some reason, hamburgers don't agree with me. I don't know what it is. I don't know, right? That sometimes we get this inspiration or these feelings and it's coming from our higher self, but it doesn't make logical sense.
mhm.
I don't know if that's making any
No,
sense
and
because this
we've
is
talked
one of
about
those where it's
we've
like,
talked about
"Whoa."
that before. Yeah, that a lot of times those insights that you get, um the intuitions, the hits, they don't make logical sense. You can't explain why, like, I don't feel like I should go to this place today that I'm supposed to go to. Why is that? I don't know. I can't really put a finger on it, but just for some reason, I just have this feeling that I really shouldn't go. You know, it's nothing that we can logically explain. It's nothing that our thinking mind can say, this is the reason why, give us XYZ, whatever the reason is. It's just that feeling, that knowing, that maybe it's a voice that you hear, but you can't put into words a reason behind it. It's this blind faith kind of a concept almost. We just kind of have to be like, you know what? Something tells me I shouldn't be going to this place, so I just gotta have to trust it. And I know that's hard for a lot of people because we get into our heads and we want to be able to explain everything, and we can't.
No, and it's, an example from my corporate world. Um, I've never really enjoyed playing golf. I've tried to play golf many times, and I know a lot of people just love golf. The CEOs that I worked with, two of them in particular, really loved golf. We would do all of our executive retreats at like these top golf courses
Mhm.
all over the country because they wanted to go play them. And I'd go to the range, I'd try to practice because I really suck at golf. Okay. I used to what was in my golf bag was about 20 or 30 extra golf balls because I would lose them all the time.
Mhm.
And because I'd hit it down the fairway, only it was in
Right, a different
the
hole.
other
It wasn't your
fairway.
own.
Yeah, for the other hole. So I never really, but I kind of, like I said, I forced myself for a little while, like, no, as an executive, you gotta, at least be able to play golf because people are going to ask you to go, but I don't really enjoy it. And I don't know what it is. It's not necessarily a logical thing.
Mhm.
There's just something that doesn't feel right to me about golf. I'd rather do so many other things than play golf, right? One of my favorite Mark Twain quotes is, golf is a 2 mile walk wasted. And I'd rather just go walk and talk to somebody and not have to hit that damn little white ball, right? Hanging out on the golf cart, driving around with people, talking with them. Hey, I love that. That's okay. Ask me to pull out the club and hit the ball. Not so much, right? So, is that a thinking or a feeling thing? Well, the thinking side of me was telling me, "Oh, you gotta learn how to play golf." People are going to ask you, "What's your handicap?" People are going to ask you to go play golf with them, right? But it's like it just never really resonated with me. And so I would be better off to say, I'd really rather not play golf. How about if we go and do this instead? That would be more true to myself. Can I logically justify why I don't like golf? No.
Because
Doesn't
that's
make
just being
sense.
bad at it, right?
Well, but it's not even that, right? Because it's
Mhm.
like I don't know. I could probably get good at it if I
Sure,
practiced
practice.
enough, but it just never really lit me up like other things do. You know, sitting down and jamming with somebody with the guitar and just having a good time. Hey, I'm all over that. That's fine. That's fun. But going and playing golf, not so much. And so it's, as we're checking in with ourselves and figuring out what we like, what we don't like, I think part of it too is, well, is this a feeling or is this a thinking? And I think, again, we've given some clues in previous episodes before about this. Well, how do
Mhm.
you know if it's the right answer? If all of a sudden one day you're like, oh, I'm supposed to go to this store, I'm supposed to go run these errands, but I don't really feel like I'm supposed to. And so then you can stop and you can check in and you can say, am I supposed to run this errand today? And again, everybody has our own way of receiving our confirmation of yes or no, or, ask again, sort of thing that we work on. And so, the more we do that and the more we do things when we want to and because we want to, then our doing comes from a place of being. And that being should be who we are. If you don't feel like washing the dishes, don't go in there and wash the dishes all pissed off,
The dishes
right?
will not appreciate that.
The dishes will not appreciate it. It will not help you. Do it when you're feeling grateful or when you feel, inspired to do it. And yes, there's certain times that things just have to be done, right? If I never felt like taking the garbage can out to the road, well, eventually my garage would stink. But there's certain things like that that maybe we have to do, but the more we can do things because we want to do them and we're doing them from a place of being, a place of our higher self, then we're learning more about ourself too.
Mhm.
And so we can check in. Well, am I thinking about, is this just because I'm thinking about it, or is it because I'm feeling that this is what I'm supposed to do? So
Mhm.
you can do the same thing with these. Do I like playing golf? Do I not like playing golf? Do I like playing golf? Do I not like playing golf? There was the answer, right?
Mhm.
I just did it right now.
There you go.
And again got confirmation that no, I don't like playing golf. And it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
But that's one of the ways when we can start to check. Now, when I'm doing that, what am I doing? I'm connecting with my higher self. Because what most people don't realize is we have guides, we have angels, we have lots of beings that are around us helping us all the time, right? Some people can see them, some people can smell them, some people can, telepathically communicate with them. They're all around us, they're helping us. And yes, a lot of the things come from these guides or spirits or angels or whatever word you want to call. But a lot of times when we're checking in and I just did what I did, Who am I checking in with? I'm not saying, oh, Archangel Michael, is this what I should do? Oh, Lord Buddha, is this what I should do? No, who am I checking in with, Brad?
Yourself.
Myself. I'm checking in with my higher self, right? In this body, we're just like a little tiny piece of our finger.
Hmm.
In this incarnation, Jason is just a little tiny part of a finger. There is a much greater part of Jason that is outside of my physical body that is our higher self. And so a lot of times when we're checking in or we use terms like the Holy Spirit or collective consciousness, who are we actually talking to? Our greater self. Because who has the most skin in the game for our incarnation in this world? Our higher self. The others are here in supporting roles and to help us, but that's who we're really helping, right? And so when we leave this body and we integrate back into this little part of us, integrates back into our higher self, right? We're here doing a job for who? A higher self. Now our higher self, in the bigger scheme of everything, it's the whole. It's the all. We're just playing a role in that bigger play. And you can think about it hierarchically, along the way. We're playing this little role down here, right? That's helping this, that's helping this, that's helping this, that's helping this, that's helping this. Keep going as far as you want to go. Millions, trillions of places to go.
Hmm.
And so that's another way to kind of think about your higher self. And I think, at least for me, one of my big epiphanies was we always like to give credit to other people or blame other people. And it's true in the physical form, but it's also true in the spiritual realm. And so a lot of times, we'll say, like I said, Holy Mother Mary, I've prayed to you, please bring me this. And then we just assume, and it's not necessarily that Holy Mother Mary didn't help us with it. But a lot more times than we realize, we're actually helping ourselves, right? Or we're blaming other people, like, oh, the devil made me do it, right? That whole thing, right? Or when these challenges or bad things happen in our lives, we try to blame it on some malevolent spirit, let's say, you know, but no, a lot of times it's our higher self teaching us a lesson or putting us in a position to learn something that we need to learn. So, everything that happens in our life is because of us. Everything that happens in our life is because of us. It's the choices we make in this body, but it's also our higher self helping us to complete the blueprint that we're supposed to complete, helping us to play that role in the play that we're supposed to be playing. And it takes a long time. I'm still learning. I don't have it all down. But the more we start to realize that, the more we start trying to connect in and to say, wow, can't believe I did that to myself. It changes perspective a lot,
Hmm.
on the good and the bad, however we choose to label it.
Sure.
Um, so yeah, it's a
Yeah.
little bit about higher self,
No.
maybe.
Yeah. No. You brought up the golf example. So when I was younger, loved playing golf. For a year in high school, I was on the golf team.
Hmm.
Once I got into college, I still tried to play and into law school a little bit. And then 2020 kind of happened, and I've not played golf since. I've not picked up a golf club since then. And a couple weeks ago, someone reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'm going to be in your town. Would you be interested in going golfing?" He's like, "I'll come, maybe come in a day early or a day late. I got a trip scheduled. Maybe I'll come a day late or something and, stay and, we can go out and, play around golf." And I told him no, because as I was sitting there and, I mean, you say the word thinking about it, but sitting there with it, it just didn't feel aligned.
Hmm.
Like I kind of envisioned myself out there playing, and I'm like, this just doesn't feel right. I mean, that's kind of one of the ways that I kind of do it is I kind of visualize myself. If there's something, I'm thinking, should I do this or that? I visualize myself doing it. Or if I may have to make a choice between one thing or another, I visualize myself with one choice or the other and just see how does it feel? And how am I, what kind of a feeling do I have inside in that role? I do the same thing when I'm trying to figure out what to eat. I kind of envision like, hey, I'm eating this. How does it feel for me? Do I want a burger? How does it feel when I'm eating the burger? Is that a good feeling right now? And that obviously that changes from moment to moment, but for something bigger like golf, I'm like, I have no problem meeting this person for lunch or grabbing a coffee or something like that. So it's not I didn't want to meet the person, but golf just didn't feel aligned, didn't resonate with me at the point.
You stuck in a golf cart with him for 4 hours? Yeah.
Yeah, not even at that, because again, you're right, the way we sound like that, you probably hit the same way that I do. Half the time, I'd be out there chasing a golf ball out in bushes or
Yeah.
fishing it from a pond or something anyway. So it's not like I'd be in there for that long. But um, just the idea of going out and playing golf just didn't, and I couldn't put a logical explanation behind it. I couldn't be like, I don't want to go out and play golf because I think it's going to be too hot, or because I am really bad and I don't have enough golf balls,
Mm-hmm.
or or something. It just sitting there thinking, I was like, yeah, it just doesn't appeal. It just doesn't sound like something I want to do.
No, and actually, the practice that you just explained there too, right? Because again, I don't want people to skip over it.
Mhm,
That's an important thing to start developing and learning. And it's one of the ways, again, to connect with our higher self and see what we really want to do or should do. Because, before we make a decision, we have lots of choices.
mhm,
The number of choices are almost infinite on what we could or couldn't do or the different options that lay ahead of us. And so, one of the practices is exactly what you talked about. Just sit with it. Think about what would it be like to eat that burger? What would it be like to eat a burrito? What would it be like to eat spaghetti or lasagna instead? Which one of those feels right? Which one of those resonates with me today? Right?
mhm.
And and then you go and you plasmate that into reality by choosing to go to a burger restaurant or a
Mhm.
Mexican restaurant or an Italian restaurant, right? And that's
Yep.
where the choice and you then plasmating that into this 3D comes in. And
Mhm.
the example with golf, anything else, it's another way for us to check in before we actually make the choice in this dimension to see what's in our highest and best interest.
Mhm.
And we can do this with anything as well.
Mhm.
Do I want to stay in my job now? No, right? I mean, you and I are both self employed, right? So we can sit and visualize different potentialities, different realities of what things could look like, and then feel into which one seems most authentic for us, which
Mhm.
one seems aligned
Mhm.
to our higher self. That word that people use all the time, aligned, yeah,
Mhm.
that connects with your higher self. When we're making decisions, right, that are authentic and aligned to our higher self, that's when things really go well. And some of these ways that we talked about today are ways that you can align yourself, align your choices more with your higher self. But how are you going to do it? You got to ask. You got to
Yeah.
do practices, right? It's no different than, hey, if I want advice from Brad on something legal, I can't just sit here and go, oh, it'd be nice if Brad would just pick up the phone and call me and answer my question. No.
I mean, maybe. I mean, you might be able to,
Maybe, I could
reach out that way. Yeah.
telepath it to you. And you might, if you were listening and paying attention, go, oh, I need to call Jason. He has a question about this. And sometimes that happens, right? The more connected we are with people, the more we're listening. But, the way to really have it happen is for me to reach out to Brad, to ask Brad. So if you want to be aligned with your higher self, if you want to get to know your higher self, ask him. Talk to yourself. Okay, as crazy as it sounds, no different than, I mean, we were joking about dating apps at the beginning, but maybe here's a way to kind of wrap up. I mean, you're dating your higher self. Ask questions, learn about it, take it on dates. Oh, you don't like to play golf. Okay, we won't go play golf again. Oh, you don't like Mexican food. I don't know anybody who doesn't like Mexican food. But it's think of it that way and play a game with it, right? To get to know yourself, to remember who you are, we got to ask questions. We got to experience things. We've got to
Mhm.
sit with it and feel into it, along the way as well. And the more we do that, the more we're going to remember, the more we're going to be aligned, the more we're going to know our higher self, right? It's just hard for us to kind of grasp that because we
Mhm.
can understand dating or courting somebody in the 3D. Well, yeah, this is in the ethers, but it's the same thing. It's the same process,
Mhm.
right? To go through it, but it takes time, just like any other relationship. If you want a strong relationship with someone, what do you have to do? You have to invest the time. You have to
Yeah.
communicate. You have to listen. You have to have
Mhm.
experiences with them. Same is true with your higher self.
So this episode is gonna be called "Dating Your Higher Self." It sounds like, or
Oh,
swipe,
let me let me write that down, right?
swipe right on your higher self. Something like that, maybe. But no, that was really good. Um, I know I got quite a bit out of that.
To help answer some of the, and like I said, this is something that we could talk
Yeah, I
about
mean, I
for
obviously know this is kind
years.
of just the surface of things like that, but a lot of it, because this is not one of those thinking things, you can't think yourself through it. It's not something that it's something that you have to experience. I mean, that's the only way you can understand this stuff is by doing it, is by experiencing it, is going to do these things. And I love, we were able to throw a couple examples out there of things that you can try, you can do to experience it yourself, to kind of tell, hey, is this really me? Is this, aligned and things like that? Um, because yeah, I mean, we could sit here all day trying to talk about what this is and how you do it, but unless you're sitting there in the silence and you're doing it, you're never gonna get it. It's not gonna make sense. So,
No, it's one of those things that we have to keep doing
and
as well.
right, and it's not a one time deal either.
It's not a one-time deal because again, think about any long-term, romantic relationship, let's say. And it's blissful when we're dating and when things are this way and we're really focused on getting to know each other and spending quality time with each other and then life starts to get in the way. and we both
Mhm.
have different jobs, and we see each other less and less, and we're both changing, but we're not staying in tune with each other. We're not, continuing to know each other and communicating as well. And so that's why, after the honeymoon phase, the first year or so, things tend to peter off, you know, and it's the same way with our higher self. These are things that we need to, think about and date our higher self, continue to date our higher self pretty much for the rest of our life, to be able to understand and have that continued connection and alignment, with them. Because I'll tell you, you can't think it through, but your higher self wants you to succeed more than any other being in all
Mhm.
of the galaxies. And so if you want its help, it's going to be there, you know. So it's a good place to start.
So with that, we'll wrap up for today. Thank you all for listening. Hopefully, um, like I said, it's something you can't really think through, and you could, I mean, you could really jump deep into this, trying to mentally work through it. Um, try it, have experiences. Um, I know this has cleared some things and give me some insight. So, um, I'm sure that those who are listening will also find great value in this conversation today. So, with that, we will wrap up. Thank you guys for joining us, being with us today, and we will catch you guys all on the next episode.
Thanks, everybody.